Hey people, let me ask you a question. Have you been looking for YouTube videos about how to do your data model? How to create a data model for parsing a JSON response? Well, guess what? I got news for all of y'all. Most of these tutorials out here are garbage. Why? Because they're lying. They're lying to you. The way they teach you how to parse JSON responses with a data model is wrong. It doesn't work. You know, the best way to do it is not in an Xcode project, it's in a playground. And you have to practice it. You have to practice going back and forth between your JSON response and your playground, making adjustments until you get it right. I show you how to do that. So you need to check out this video so you can learn how to do it. Okay, so everyone, let's get into it. And what I want you to do is go to this website, newsapi.org. You're going to log in and you're going to get an API key. Now, if you're confused about what an API key is, go back and look at some of the previous videos. Okay, so this is your main page right here. And these are your API calls. And you can kind of go through here and see what API calls you want to get. Top business headlines. What? All articles mentioning Apple from yesterday. All articles about Tesla from last month. TechCrunch, right? So you can get all of this and put it in your API. This is the URL you're going to use. And this is where you're going to put your API key. So, I have this right here. Of course, I'm going to blur out my API key. And this is what it returns, right? Right here. Bitcoin, as you can see, it's sending the request, 5, 6, 7, whatever, 8 seconds, 5 seconds, 5.97 seconds. And status is okay. And this is the information returned from the API call. So now I want everyone to think about this. We're going to talk about parsing this, right? This is our model. How do I write our model based on this response? Because this is what we have to do. And in order to learn how to do this well, you have to practice it. You have to understand the rules and practice and debug it. In my opinion, doing this inside of a project is not efficient. And you aren't going to get the practice that you need. What you want to do is you want to practice with several APIs over and over again, maybe hours every day. But you don't want to be wasting your time working on the same model for the same JSON response all day long. Okay? And so I have a solution. And it is this. Instead of using a project, use a playground. So I have this code. This code is up in my GitHub. The link is in the description. And right here, this is the model that I've created for this. So let's go ahead and go over the steps of creating a model, right? I'm going to put this side by side. Put this side by side with the data model. Okay. So now let's do this. So I named this news object. Excuse me. At the very top of this is a status, which is a string, as you can see right there. Total results, which is an integer, 8745. And then, of course, articles, which this is an array of another object. So what I do is, of course, I just create this and leave that empty. Then I create the model that I'm going to use to populate this and have the fields that I'm going to use. Inside of this, there's an object called source, which source is another custom object right here. And all I want is the ID and the name. That's it. Okay. Which is right here, ID and name. Okay. So source is of type source. Author is of type string. You know, as you can see, no more custom, no more uh custom objects, right? All these are, basic data types, fundamental data types, string. All these are strings, actually. I wouldn't say integers, but all these are strings. String. Okay, and then I have another enumeration, right? And this enumeration, it deals with um ID, right? So I don't have an object for ID. In this case, I created an enumeration. Within this enumeration, I have different types. Let's look at what Business Insider is inside of our data. Business Insider. Okay, and there we go. Business Insider. Right there. And what is Business Insider? Is one type of it's what we're going to use instead of ID. Business Insider. And see, and as you go throughout here, die zeets, Command F, V, right here. Again, ID, right? Again, ID. This is of type ID, right here. Now, of course, you can do the same thing with wired. You better believe that wired correlates to this property right here in source, which is ID. Command F. Okay, right here. Come on. Command F, wired. And there you go again. ID, which is of type ID, right? But of course, I mean, I think this would probably still work if we made ID a string. But we're not going to. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and let's run this and see if it works. Of course, you've seen that it's already been ran. Right, and this is our news API URL with our API key in there, and another parameter Q Bitcoin is the value. Okay, and as you can see, Jessica Klein, author, right? Okay, the title Bitcoin Bros Go Wild for Donald Trump. Bitcoin Bros Go Wild for Donald Trump. You have another one, author Joel Khalili. Craig Wright faces perjury investigation over claims he created Bitcoin. As you can see, I'm pulling, and this is what I want. I want this data formatted back this way. Okay. And this is where we do our parsing, right? So as you see, here's my model, right? And my model is called news object. Okay. Again, I get down here, news object dot self, data, parse the data. Now I'm going to loop through news object dot articles, which is this. This is the news object, that's articles. Articles is an array. Okay. Within this array, I have a source, author, title, description, right? So I have source, which is a source name, right? I have item author, right? And I have item title right here. Okay. And of course, as you can see, with two of these can possibly be nil. Why? Because source is optional, right? So this doesn't come back saying optional. I use this right here, 2 question marks. And if this is nil, it returns an empty string. So that here in the console, it doesn't say optional around wire. Let me show what I'm talking about. I'm going to remove this. I'll run this again. As you see, now this says optional, right? You go back up to the top. Optional. Wired is optional, right? But I don't want this to say optional. So what I'm going to do is unwrap it and make this an empty string, right? Go back, rerun the whole thing, come back, go to the top. Now it doesn't say optional. Okay. Another thing you guys have to understand that in a playground, so that asynchronous, you can make an asynchronous call inside of your playground. At the very top, you have to say playground page dot current needs indefinite execution equals true. This allows the playground to continuously run. That means you press the button, but because it's asynchronous, what happens may take a little bit of time because you're making a call. You're making a call remotely over the internet, and then that response comes back, right? So this allows it to keep playing, so you can do that, right? And at the end of when these fail, you want to shut it down. You want to say finish execution every time these fail, right? And then you want to halt execution when everything is done. When the playground is done, you want to finish execution again. Okay? So you just have to remember that when you're writing this. So also go back step by step, okay? So again, you have your model, right? You have your import statements, playground support, playground.current needs indefinite execution equals true. You have your model. Now you have your URL. You want to create your URL. And I'm going to have my URL with my API key and my parameters. Okay. The URL, if the URL is legit and it's not invalid, it comes down here. A session.share.data task with URL. This closure opens up, right? And then you can test everything. You know, you test everything and see if it works. Data's there. You take the data, and you start parsing it. You get your decoder, decoder.decode your custom object from data. Of course, you know, this is a do try catch, right? And then once you get everything you need from out of here, you loop through it and we'll display it in the console. And same thing with it with an error. I mean, even with an error, you're going to come here and you're going to finish your execution. Like always, when you're running these API calls, You want your task to resume, and that's it. So, in order to get practice that you really want, what you can do is you can go and you can delete all of this right here, the data model, and put in your own data model. Switch URLs, put in another URL, and then start working on creating another custom model for another API call. Okay, the rest of this can remain the same, except for the custom object. That must be changed. And of course, the data that you're iterating through to display in your console. And that's it. So I hope you got a lot out of this. I tried to be concise with this and not waste your time doing a lot of typing. You need to go to my GitHub and download this playground, run it on your environments, and get this running, get this working. And yeah, so we're on to the next.